Okay, great. And you can upload it to Unfiltered when we're done. So yeah, this is kind of a kickoff of some kind for the new templates team, where we'll be talking about this epic get up and running quickly with GitLab CI, which was used to share quite widely. As you can see, there's a ton of comments in here, and there's a ton of issues that have been linked to it. Talking a little bit about how that was done, what the context is, what these issues are, and how that will relate to the new templates team and what should end up on this category direction page. One thing that I should say is that the scope of this team is beyond just the templates category, or we need to figure out kind of how to structure this. But some of these issues, for example, this one, adding a CI template for AI ML workflows, would clearly be part of a direction for templates. And we have other ones that are create a template for .NET, create a template for whatever. And those would clearly end up here. The other things that this team will be working on are actually a little bit all over the place. A lot of them are in the continuous integration category because they're about making continuous integration easier to use. They can be in the release categories, they can be in the package categories as well. I don't think that we're going to be able to use a category label for those because they belong in the category that they belong in, and in the the stage that they belong in. We wouldn't move something that's about the way releases work into verify and then into templates category just to track it. So the one thing that's flexible is there is a group templates label that can be applied onto any issue, and the only thing that the group so the stage, there can be only one of them, and it refers to the stage that this feature belongs to. So if it's a feature about releases, like I said, it should be in the release stage, and it should always stay there, and that's fine. The category, you can have more than one. So one option could potentially be to add category templates to all of these things, but that's also sort of confusing too, because not all of them have anything to do with templates. One thing that you can do is, if you're going to start work on these, if you're going to put them into a iteration, then you can add the group templates label to them. And then you can search on that. But this will replace whatever team is working on that. But all this label is intended to indicate is the team that's working on something, rather than, because we still have the category, we still have the stage. If somebody wants a view that's about the category or about the stage, this will still show up in there. This is just the group that's assigned to deliver it. But this probably would only get assigned as you get a little closer to delivering something, like I said. So I think it would be a little odd to go through and move all of these things into this group.
A small question here, Jason. So how would you see the work in future being kind of like identified that this is a templates group work? Is it everything that will be related to onboarding and getting started and YAML templates?
Yeah, exactly. And so where I'm getting is, I think that we need we're probably going to need a new label for this team. Maybe just something, maybe there already is one, but like there is a label called onboarding. I don't know what's in there. Let's see. If it's not widely used, yeah, it's not really. It looks like maybe one designer was using it at one point and then abandoned it. So maybe this could be taken over and used as a label to track everything that's related to this team. Adding an extra label is fine. That doesn't interfere with any other label that's there. And then you can always do a search to find all the issues that are related to onboarding.
Yeah, I think onboarding is also a lot related to onboarding people. Actually, I've seen a lot of some UX
what these are?
And designers onboarding.
Oh yeah, it looks like it doesn't look like it's used very much. There's only a total of 18 issues that are open. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that we can do is just make a new one for sure. We can definitely make a new one. It's like CI/CD onboarding or something like that. That's very clear and it will not confuse anybody. And in fact, why don't we just agree on this? Is this fine with everybody?
Yes, makes sense.
What color do you like?
Purple.
Purple?
To the right of that.
Violet?
Because I don't see that used very often. It'll jump out.
Yeah, sure. Flesh color, okay. So yeah, we should say in here something like this. label contains items that are on the radar of the CI/CD or the verify template.
Are we, hey Jason, so are we set on the name of the group being?
The name of the group is the templates group, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to revisit that, trust me. It was a debate that I was like losing my mind by the end. Because I was like, I don't care what you call it. You call it Steve. Just pick a name. Let's move on. Let's go on. We were debating so much. Oh, God. I'll go ahead and start by adding that label to this epic. Yeah, and now, yeah, somebody has a task. I can do this. I'm good at doing this sort of thing. I'm very, very fast at it. If you want me to just go through and apply all these on Monday, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, at least on the issues that you're actively working on and breaking down or thinking about, take a moment and add this CI/CD onboarding label, and then I'll go back and clean up everything else. Okay. So yeah, now let's move on to the context and kind of what's here so far. I created this epic when I was realizing that in the strategy, in order to continue to drive adoption, there's a lot that we need to do around getting people up and running quickly. One of the original ideas that this sprang from was from Mark Punsack, who said that one of the most interesting measures for a CI/CD system is the time to your first green build. It's basically from the moment you say, okay, I'm going to try and load my project into GitLab, and then I'm going to dork around with it until it works. And then you get your first green build eventually, where you finally got your CI YAML written, you worked out all the bugs that were part of that, and you have now successfully got something running in GitLab. And that's a super, super important flow that needs to work not only for actual user happiness, but for sales, for onboarding, for training at companies. Like all of this, we benefit in so many ways from doing this. The maturity of the CI/CD product in general is pretty good, and so this is an area that we really have an opportunity to do some big things. So what I did was I created this epic, and then I shared it a few times on Twitter, like once every month or something like that for each month. And then as I was seeing different issues, I was trying to remember that this exists, and then adding related epics to it as I saw them. Now it sort of can duplicate, it's a duplicate of this CI/CD onboarding label. So yeah, the next big task is to take this big epic, which has a million things in it and has also all these discussions in it from the people who commented that I shared it with on Twitter, and turn it into actual epics that you're going to deliver and actual issues that you're going to deliver in some sort of plan. Right now, it's just a catch-all of everything, and it's way too vague. And that's sort of what this meta label means. There's some guidance in the handbook that talks about what to do with these meta issues. Them existing for 3 months is fine. But what you'll find is if we let this exist for a year without closing this and having broken it down, is that this will just collect more and more things, and more people will be commenting on it. And eventually you'll get into this state where this epic means doing something totally different to every single person who has interacted with it. They're like, oh yeah, they get up and running quickly with GitLab CI. You know, my favorite thing was the templates. So yeah, when that gets delivered, it's going to be all about templates, and everybody will have a slightly different version of that. So it's important that we don't wait too much longer. We break this down into the core thing to do, I guess I would say, is we need to close this epic. Some of these things already have epics, so we just need to label those CI/CD onboarding. But the rest, there's different themes that run through this. We need to figure out what those themes are and create epics for those themes, or we need to create MVCs for those themes that tie together a few features that are going to deliver some meaningful thing. Does that make sense? And then we'll close this one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Hey,
yeah.
So once those are created, do we still want to link to this one, or just make a comment that this other thing will be handled in this other epic? I mean,
Yeah. During the process of dealing with this, I would say link the new epic in here so that you can do this, and we can see, you know, like we can see what's in an epic and what's not of all of these items. We'll use it as a workspace. So, you know, create an epic for this, link this to the epic, and then we'll see the same number of items here, but except they'll be organized into a few categories.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll close this one and probably unlink them all. But I would recommend keeping everything in one place in this epic for the process while you're tearing it apart.
Okay, you said something really quietly. You said once we're done kind of organizing everything, we will unlink it from this one?
Yeah, or just close it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so that's
the other thing that we could do is like rename this into like some more broad thing that's like, just call it like the onboarding, and I don't know what we call it, but the spirit would be that it's the catch-all for everything that your team is working on. But then it would sort of duplicate this label, so I don't know.
Well, actually, what I'm asking is, you know, before I close this one, do we want to still preserve the linking to other epics where the actual work will be done for just historical reference, or do I want to unlink everything?
So when you make a new epic, link that epic to this one. Yeah. And then link the issues that you move to that epic.
Sure.
And then everything will stay related.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing I'll cover is the one that I'm not going to go into too much detail on, which is all these comments. We need to read through all of the comments. Probably familiarize yourself with these issues and epics first, then read through all these comments, and if they are adding additional information to any of these issues or epics, then replicate it there. If they're suggesting some new idea, create a new issue for it, and essentially deal with all of these comments in that way. They all need to be turned into notes on some other issue or a new issue. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And all of them should get the onboarding label and then be linked to this epic or into some other epic that's linked to this epic.
I'm applying the onboarding label just so it may less work for you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. As long as everything remains linked, then if we miss some labels, it's okay. Yeah. So there's that. Now let's go through what's here, and I'll give you a brief introduction to at least what I know about each of these topics. And this will be the meat of this meeting. I'll just keep going. So if you want to pause and talk about anything, just shout, and otherwise I'll just keep going. Replace documentation examples of only accept with workflow rules examples. So only accept is not deprecated, but it's our legacy way of doing rules in the projects, in the GitLab CI YAML. So whether a job should run or not, use this. This job should only run under this scenario syntax. We've replaced that with a workflow keyword, which can define rules at the entire pipeline level, and the rules keyword, which can just entirely replace the only accept rules. It's much more flexible. It's much nicer. It's human understandable in a way that the other one is not. But our documentation is filled with examples that use only accept to demonstrate all kinds of different things. So we need somebody to deeply understand the way workflow rules work so that they can write good examples. And then go through, and I did a grep in here to try and find the pages. And so there's these, 20, 25 pages that all have different references to only or accept or both on them. And replace those with better, more clear examples that use workflow rules. And that will help, of course, people on board because we're driving them now to this better syntax. Something that I tend to see more and more is somebody is just adopting GitLab and they'll report an issue and they'll say, I'm having trouble in some way with only accept and I'm having trouble with this example. And then we end up redirecting them saying like, oh, don't use only accept, use workflow rules. So we just want to cut out that step of them having to submit a support ticket. more helpful pipeline error response details. In some places were good, some places were poor. But when something goes wrong, and something often will go wrong, we need to provide better explanation of what happened and even potentially suggest what they could do. Making CI lovable for mono repos. We've done some things recently that make a big difference here. So we delivered the directed acyclic graph. We've delivered parent-child pipelines. There are other follow-ups for the directed acyclic graph that are still open. All of them are scheduled between now and 13.0. So those things you don't have to worry about. The features themselves are coming or already delivered, just like parent pipeline is. The two things here are improving the documentation. So maybe have like a mono repo landing page that can tell people, hey, you're using a mono repo with GitLab. Here, we suggest doing these things as best practices. That would be awesome. And then package workflow. So working with the package team to talk about what's the best way that packages can work. Potentially some kind of mono repo sample project would be cool too. That might be an issue that's missing here that could be added. Making ML AI pipelines easier to set up and use is another good one. I think this is maybe documentation. I'm less familiar with this one. I think somebody else added that recently. But adding CI/CD. You added this one?
Yeah.
Okay, then you already know what it is. Collect quality data from ML CI/CD pipelines and then add a CI/CD template. So this is, well, it's a template. Setting up Kubeflow for your first time is quite complicated. Doing that also with GitLab at the same time is another layer of complexity. If you're new to both of them, then you're going to need help. So this is about making a template where you can click it, it'll be up and running, and then you can start customizing from there, which is always easier than trying to implement everything from scratch. Collecting quality data from ML CI/CD pipelines. So this is an issue for delivery that's on the testing team, but I'll explain it. This is, so ML models have different measures of quality than regular code does, or they have additional ones. So they have bugs and things like that too, and so they'll run tests and they'll measure that. But like a great example for an ML model is fitness to the data. So they'll have some sample data. They'll already know the answers of what the model should identify it as. So like if it's 1 billion pictures of cats, they'll know that the model should say that there's nothing but cats in the model. And then fitness is a score that the model receives depending on how many things it identified as cats. And so tracking that over time and showing, like how your model is behaving against your sample data is a cool feature that would make it would be easier to set up and use CI/CD pipelines for ML. Onboarding flow for GitLab pages on the product marketing site. So this is helping people use GitLab pages a little bit easier. Audit also has a research task out to figure out why we don't have so many people using pages. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of review apps. But either way, helping people get up and running with different features. The product, of course, is a core thing that your team will work on. Integrate CI lint into the web IDE. Oh yeah, this would be awesome. This is probably, so there's some features that are like this. And actually I want to say something else to the other one. Some of the features that you'll be working on are in other PM's areas. Or I guess everything you'll be working on is technically in another PM's area, except for things that are strictly related to building templates. You're always going to want to check in with them to see what they've already got planned, to see what research they might have done that would feed into this, and just touch base. And so in this example, working with Audit or Jackie, I can't remember who has pages, and just checking in and say, hey, in a release or two, I'm about to kick this off. What do you think? Like, what's the latest here is important. And then this one is a similar one where it's owned by a different product team. So the web IDE is owned by Create, one of the teams in Create, and having the CI lint be automatically built into the web IDE, and then somewhere in here we've also, I think, got syntax highlighting for the CI YAML, autocomplete for the CI YAML. It would be great to implement those features. You may, if you check with them, they may say like, oh yeah, you can actually do that yourself. Your engineering team can build this feature, and here's like some documentation on how it works. And I think that might be the case for these, but I'm not sure. Or you're going to need to work with that product manager and say, hey, we can make a big difference in the onboarding, and kind of pitch them on scheduling some work that can unblock you or help you get a feature. So that'll be a little bit of a unique thing with your team. All the teams have to do that to a certain extent, but you may find yourself doing that a bit more.
As far as coordinating with teams, which team was the one that was responsible for creating the templates that already exist? Is it the managed team?
It's your team.
No, the templates that we already have, like the group level templates and the.
Like who made them?
Yeah, instance level template. Was there a team that,
They were contributed. I made several of them. The managed team probably made the first couple. Other contributors have made them. It's meant to be that anybody can contribute one, but it's a little bit of a pain, which is another thing that you're going to find pretty soon is, I don't think there's an issue in here for it, but making templates and updating templates in the product is a pain, and it's manual. And you're going to want to automate that sooner than later, because you're going to keep bumping into it. Every time you try to update a template and update it in the product, every time you try to make a new one, you're going to go through this doable but manual process.
I saw the instructions for how to contribute to either creating a new one or editing one. It was pretty involved.
Yeah, it's like a 15 to 20 step thing, and some of the steps are quite long.
Like, for example, when I looked at you had linked in today's meeting invite, you had linked to the one doc that exists for custom group level project templates, and it said introduced in release 11.6, but I couldn't quite tell. I think it was Jeremy's group, and his is managed.
Yeah, they built the initial infrastructure for this, but now you own it. So you can, it's definitely, once you have an engineering manager, for example, they should touch base and do some kind of technical handoff, and you should probably reach out to whoever was the PM for this and figure out how to do some kind of handoff of what was in their backlog, because there's probably actually items.
You're aware we're going to be doing that, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's already done even.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's 60 issues in your backlog that all came from Manage that are about doing different things with templates. So you're going to want to look through this as well. Probably in here is something about, like, if I search by priority, there's even things scheduled for 12.7, 12.8. I don't know. I guess there's some other groups doing things related to templates, which is fine. I look at popularity. There's actually
they're scheduled for 12.8. The second,
but it's by group orchestration, so that's fine. Yeah, it looks like there's a mishmash of different groups, but yeah, there's not really anything in here that's that's super highly upvoted that would look like an emergency or whatever. But yeah, definitely familiarize yourself with this backlog as well. Some of those things should go up on here. Okay. Did I answer every question?
yes.
Okay, great. Where were we? CI length, yeah. So yeah, it would be great to have, before you can commit, it would just validate your GitLab CI YAML syntax and not let you commit something that was broken. That would be awesome. Syntax highlighting also, and autocomplete is in here somewhere, I believe, or should be created, where if you start typing a YAML keyword, it could let you just press tab and finish out the word, but also it could potentially show some helper text over it, like, here's what this does, here's what parameters it expects, and so on. That would be super, super cool.
That's actually, it was in one of the comments of this epic.
Great, yeah. And I do think that there's probably an issue for that, but we'll find out.
And then this issue specifically regarding CI lint, there's a slight duplicate of it that Dimitri recently created out of his research for onboarding. Do I take the older one or the one that has more information and close whichever one has the least to
Yeah, take the one that has more conversations and upvotes, and there's not a ton in this one, but yeah, you just kind of have to merge them. Yeah. Make sure that there's no, take whatever context is not in the other one, mark it as duplicate and move the context over.
Okay.
Expand working examples of CI/CD. Yeah, I don't know what's in the issue, but that's a great topic. Refactor the container registry doc. Sure, there's probably some ideas about what's wrong with it in here. Add a specific example to the CI/CD documentation. An update for the template to take advantage of the NPM registry. Make composable auto DevOps elements easy to find and use. Yeah, so we released composable auto DevOps a while back, which breaks out auto DevOps into like 10 different individual templates. So like the build, the test, the deploy, but then also like security scans and whatever the 10 other things are. But it's not super discoverable how you can choose which of those to run or how you start customizing them. So this issue is about making that more visible in some way. I think there's some designs in here and stuff too. Yeah, so all of the templates produce some kind of artifact, or at least most of the templates produce some kind of artifact. But most of them, I don't think, have, they aren't deploying it to the package registry, the appropriate package registry, and they should. So this is going through and adding that feature. So you could work with Tim on this one. And that actually reminds me, I want to pause for a second where, and show you something, because I don't know if there's an issue for it. Yeah, every time. So there's, if you edit a GitLab CI YAML, in addition to project templates, there's also these like GitLab CI YAML templates. These are all checked in, and all these is a sample GitLab CI YAML on its own. Whereas a project template can have other files in the repository, it can show all kinds of different things, and it can actually build something. But like this is our C++ template. If you pick it, then it looks like what it does is it uses a GCC Docker image. It has a build stage. It runs G++, the C++, C++ compiler. It creates a binary called myBinary, yeah, and then it assumes that you have a file called runmytest.sh. The quality on these tends to be pretty low on these templates, and they're just super all over the world in terms of how complex they are, what kinds of things they do. So I think you're going to want to audit these and try and maybe come up with some standards, validate against these standards. But you can see some of them have test phases, some of them don't, some of them have deploy phases, some of them don't. And they're just super, super inconsistent. They are helpful. Like if so I'd used them before, like when I was looking at Go, I was like, oh, okay, I can kind of see that there's a Golang latest, and I need to set a repo name, and I can run, Go format, Go vet, Go test, and build, and so on. And so you can kind of get an idea here. Some of them are incredibly out of date as well. I don't know which ones are out of date, but like, this is a current version of Ruby, but like I know we have some examples of templates where you go to it and it's like a 4-year-old example. And so, yeah, again, the main point is that these need to be audited in some way to make sure that they at least don't send people off on a wild goose chase. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want, as a result of that audit, do you want the things that we find that are kind of outdated, would the goal be to update it or to just pull it all together and move it?
No, I think it'll depend. So you should do the audit. I think you'll find some things in there that are, we need to update this, but it's not an emergency. Or we need to make something that isn't there. Or this is something that if anybody ever tried to use it, it would just like frustrate them and confuse them, and we should take it down as the first action and then replace it with something better.
Okay.
But it will depend on how bad it is. Okay, composable auto DevOps, I think I finished that one. Package registry, integrations with templates. Yeah, okay, so that's actually the one we were on. Add and streamline package project creation through UI. I'm actually not sure what this one is. Okay, it's a nice onboarding flow for the package team then. So if you start by deploying a package, it looks like what this is it can create a project at the same time to deal with it, which is cool. Visualized editing of pipelines and visual editor for GitLab CI/YAML are very similar, if not identical. Yeah, GitHub Actions has one where you can kind of like drag wires between jobs and design your pipeline. It doesn't look like this has too much into it.
I feel like we've heard a lot about this one. Like it's always on the talk.
Yeah. A lot of people have talked in the issue as well, and we only got 37 upvotes after 3 years, which is not really very many. This is an interesting case. So there's some interesting things about onboarding, and one of them is that sometimes you can improve onboarding and thereby also improve everything that person does for the rest of time, right? Like that you can make a flow easier that's part of onboarding, but then it's also one that you repeat on some regular basis or even every day in some cases. Other ones are like you only ever literally do it one time. It's maybe like when you're installing GitLab or something, you maybe have to do something that's a little bit of a pain. And it annoys the heck out of you when you're doing it that first time. And then you never do it again. And within a week, you forgot that you ever even had to do it. And it doesn't really bother you. And it doesn't impact your experience of GitLab. I wonder that if this one is kind of like that, where everybody, when they first start using GitLab, is like, wow, I wish I had a visual editor. But then they learn how to edit the GitLab CI/YAML, and then they would never, it's more powerful, and they would never pull up a visual editor to do where they could just type some text. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I guess there is a lot of value could be taken from talking to users, to people, to prospects, and of course it's somewhere where my team can help, and Lori setting up, and like I feel like there is a lot of experimentation will be needed, and like data and stuff.
Yeah, you just need to be careful, because if you talk to prospects and people who've never used GitLab, they'll all tell you it's a wonderful idea.
Of course.
So what we should we need to also balance that with people who, you know, you started using GitLab, you wished that there was a visual editor, but then you learned the YAML syntax, and if we added one now, would you start using it?
Yeah, we need to define the target audience for this feature as well, and then start.
Yeah. And so that impacts the ROI of the feature.
And then the other question is, since it's less powerful to have a visual editor, would it also make it harder to, once they've used it at the beginning, to transition to the more powerful YAML?
Yeah, I don't know. GitHub Actions has one though, so we can look at that. Maybe it's possible now to make a powerful editor that works and you know, doesn't get in your way.
Or maybe a hybrid of it where you can pause as you're building it in the syntax and have a visualization to see where it's at.
Yeah, so there's another issue here.
Yeah.
Just the visualization of a GitLab CI/YAML, which is probably where you would start, right? Start with a visualization, and then maybe like add some ways to edit the elements of the visualization. So maybe you can like start with the visualization, then maybe you can double click on a job and it shows you the YAML for that job. And then you can edit it with text there, and then we can kind of continue iterating that way. Maybe that's the best way to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a ton of research and discussion and interesting stuff in these three. Oh, here's another one that's like on the same topic. So interactive editing of the GitLab CI/YAML is the one that I was talking about, where there would be like auto completion or context help and things like that. It doesn't look like there's much in this particular epic, but there's a lot of issues that are underneath it that do different things. So, and look, here's another duplicate of the lint, auto completion, real-time rendering of the YAML visualization, a bunch of cool stuff in here. So maybe this could be one of your epics that you keep, and then you can put a couple of these ones that would fit under there in here, and then deal with the duplicates. Natively supporting the hypercloud deployment. So Auto DevOps supports Kubernetes and was built around Kubernetes. And but many people are still using like GCP, Azure, and AWS, but the non-Kubernetes solutions, and just deploying to like EC2 or whatever, just like Dockers or even VMs. Some people are still deploying VMs. So supporting those in something that's as easy to do as Auto DevOps is something that Audit is actually working on right now. These are all on the release team and the progressive delivery team. And so we had the issue that we talked about related to discoverability of Auto DevOps components. This should probably also fit into that same, it's the same concept really, and it's the same discoverability area. It's like, hey, you know, what are you deploying? And what do you want to test? And what language is it? Where are you deploying to? There's a few questions like that if we can get the answers to, then we know, ideally we can automatically do it. But if not, we can at least like point people to like, okay, use this template, use this template, use this template, and then it will all come together. That would like grab all the right bits of Auto DevOps, it would grab all the right bits of the deployment stuff that Audit is writing, and help people get their first pipeline up and running super quickly, even if it's not to EKS. There's a really nice experience right now if you have like a container-based project that's in one of the languages we support, that's deploying to a Kubernetes cluster. Auto DevOps will just come in, it will automatically detect your language, it will run tests in your repository automatically, it will run security scans on it, it will build it, it will deploy it to your cluster, and everything like automatically the very first time that you start your project. We want that for more than just if you're using Kubernetes, and that's what this is all about. GitLab CI recipes, this is one, so I don't know what we're going to do with this one. What we don't want though, so it's easier for me to say what we don't want than what we do want. What we don't want is like little bits of code that we expect people to copy and paste around, which is sort of what's in the issue now. It's kind of like snippets. I even think this issue was called snippets at one point. And it would just be like a repository of best practices or templates that you could use in order to solve different problems. It's kind of like the GitLab CI YAML templates that we were looking at, except more for like on a per job basis instead of the whole GitLab CI YAML. So like here's a snippet for an AWS deployment. Here's a snippet for, I guess this is just the same example. Yeah, I don't know, it's not very nice. The way that GitHub and CircleCI do this is that they have actually a container-based thing. And we should follow up with that in a separate conversation. I don't want to talk about that on a recorded call right now. But there's some interesting things that we're looking at related to that and how we're going to solve this problem. This also is being worked on in Audit's area right now. So if you're interested in seeing what we're doing, let's follow up after this call and then connect with Audit.
There was a comment from a contributor in the epic down somewhere in there about it would be nice to have a big example library of jobs, like little snippets of.
Yeah, for sure. I would, and I think that's great to include in the documentation in places like that. But if it's a common thing that people do, we should provide an easy way to do that. I can describe what actions in CircleCI do. So they have a little system for wrapping all of this up inside of a container and then running the individual containers as steps in a build pipeline. So you know how we have the GitLab CI YAML, we have the script section, and then you can run all your commands in the script section, you just write them out there. Imagine if you could put a container, a reusable container that's hosted somewhere on any of those lines. And so if somebody has written an AWS checkout action, then instead of you writing the command line for AWS, you can just point to that AWS checkout action or whatever that, and it will always just it'll go grab it, it'll run it. If that ever needs to change, some other developer somewhere can change it, and it's open source, and it will just be pulled in. And so they're reusable snippets in the way that this is describing, but it's in a nicer way than just having like a web page where you can go copy and paste text from. But having examples in the documentation is great, and that's something that we should continue. But we shouldn't expect that that's the primary way of working for people. We can do better than that.
Okay.
And then contextual documentation to help users download NPM pages looks like maybe it's something that was already delivered, which is great. Don't have to worry about it. And then this is a big one that, yeah, maybe you were touching on earlier, but Dimitri had done a ton of research and made a bunch of issues around onboarding experiences. So you're going to want to connect with him and figure out what all of this stuff is, and if there's like a summary report, and then also absorb this into what you're doing. I suspect that there'll end up being a lot of duplication of what we're hearing from customers here, because I think this was all based off of talking to customers as well. And there's definitely some common threads here. There's definitely some common threads here, but that's all doable. I mean, we can go through this and we can find all kinds of different things. There's probably some smaller things in here too that would be nice to do. Some of them are even scheduled.
There were smaller things we were trying to get into 12.7 or 12.8.
Yeah, that didn't end up working. But yeah, there are some things scheduled. It looks like, I don't know. This is in 12.7, but it's still not closed, which is a little strange. Maybe it's in verification. So in theory, it was deployed to production, but who knows?
Okay.
Yeah, and that's it. As far as what I would do in terms of a plan of attack, you can do whatever you want, but this is what I would do. I would start with the comments. Or, well, no, first I would just read through all of these issues and meet with Dimitri and talk about what he had come up with and see if there's kind of like a summary somewhere of what all of this means.
With me.
Okay, great.
With the CI team, but they're not necessarily going to be working on it now, but yeah.
Yeah. Then once you're familiar with this and you've got it in your head a little bit, like what all these concepts are, then you can work on this because you, without being familiar with all of that to a certain extent, you won't know what you've already got issues for and what you need a new issue for. But you could do something like, you could add a certain reaction that indicates, like put a tennis ball on every single one that you've parsed and processed and created an issue for, or whatever, some way to mark it. And then, yeah, just make all the new issues or update the issues that exist for the topics. And then what I would do is go deal with sorting these into epics. And this is a tricky thing to do because there's no necessarily right answer, and there's trade-offs to different things, but you need to pick, try to, maybe you can order these things, you can like move them up and down. Maybe try and play with that for a bit and group them into themes that you can come up with and say like, okay, like I put all the designer ones and interactive editing around in the same space, and those seem like they're all related. Maybe you could put some template related ones in another area. You could put all the examples in another place. And then once you've sort of got it into themes that you can understand and deal with, then you can create the epics, move those into the epics, and go from there. And then hopefully by that point, by that point, you can start thinking about, what are the initial things you want to go after. At that point, you'll be super, super familiar with everything in this backlog, more than anybody else. And you'll know, where the most value comes from, and you can start scheduling things out into a couple milestones. And hopefully by then we've got engineers to actually build it. But even if we don't, even if you were to like do all of this somehow today, and like on Monday I come in, you're like, no, we don't have any engineering yet. We haven't even started hiring for FY21 as far as I know. Then what I would say is, okay, well, let's find the really valuable ones and try and get them onto other engineering teams. That's another path that we have if we're still waiting on your engineering team to be created.
Okay.
Do we have a plan for, maybe, of course, we probably discussed this question, but when are we planning to have the engineering team for this? approximately?
It's soon. I don't know that the dates haven't been published yet. They're still being worked on, but yes, this is getting at least some people on the new team is one of the top priorities. I think the only other one that's maybe the same priority is building out the runner team.
I see. Because I see now that you will need a lot of like research and, definitely a lot of like Dimitri's capacity with regards to the research that he done in regards to the CI onboarding. And unfortunately, yeah, we just like lost a candidate for the product designer that we've been hiring. So we are continuing there, but yeah, maybe I can imagine that there is a lot of Dimitri's attention in the beginning will be needed to this.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how busy Dimitri is or whatever. When we were meeting with him yesterday, we found that in the 12.10 release, there actually isn't that much UX stuff. So maybe we can switch focus to this, and that works out. If Dimitri is too busy to help, I still think we should go ahead and not just wait.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is just also like research stuff that I don't know if Tao will need help with, but we can ask for Lori's help and Emily's, and
Yeah.
so I can also Tao, feel free to reach out. Well, and actually we can just also make a strategy there as soon as you have the feeling that you kind of like have the direction to go, so I can back you up on the research resources that needed.
Yeah, and if Lori and Dimitri's too busy, they can guide me a little, and I'll just move forward with the research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that would be amazing and very useful for you in any way, because it sounds to be a pretty exciting area with a lot of research, collecting data, comparison and like experiments. Oh,
yeah, a lot of talking to customers and talking to new people.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, it's a really exciting area.
I thought of a question earlier when you were going, and I should have interrupted you, but I'm trying to think of what it is. Oh, okay. One thing that Sid had mentioned, I think it might have been on the group conversation, the CI/CD group conversation, that Mark had said, or it was in the agenda topic about, are we exceeding eight groups within a certain stage? And so Sid had said, we'll make templates a non-marketable group.
Yeah, non-marketing category. I'll show you what that means. It just means that it doesn't show up on the homepage. So
more importantly, I want to know, is there something different I need to be doing with the page or?
What that controls is if it shows up here or not on this chart.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we had templates here as an additional row. Now we don't show templates here, which makes the page look nicer. So Verify actually had 2, maybe even 3 more here. And so all of the white space between the other categories got stretched out, and Verify became like the long pole. But your category is still just a normal category, and it shows up here. Like if we look at the Verify templates group, it's still here as a normal category. It's an italic because it doesn't show up on the homepage.
Okay, and
but
then
that's the only thing it means.
Actually, my next question is on that page. When you added templates group to this categories page, I know you had to model it after the CI group, but how much of this is accurate? Is William my PMM?
This is the only thing that's accurate as far as I know. Oh no, I did do your customers, which doesn't have names of people, but so no, I don't know. I think William is going to be replaced anyway with name starts with a P. I can't remember it. I apologize if he watches this video. Yeah, most of these, Darby will tell us who the new person is. But until then, I don't know. We could replace them with to be hires as well. Whatever he wants to do. I pinged him in the issue when I made this, but yeah, the only one as far as I know that's correct is this.
Okay. All right. I'll go in and actually update it to be hired, because when it came up in the Verify Managers meeting earlier this week, it's misleading to some people if they don't know those. Some of those are like only the PM is the accurate.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like what you should put is the letters TBD, and then it will link to.
Okay.
Yeah. If you do that, then it will link to the team page.
Okay. That's it.
Anything else? No?
No.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, one other thing. When you were mentioning when I'm going through and reading the actual individual comments on this epic, your suggestion was to throw like a tennis ball emoji on there so that I know that I've covered it somewhere in an existing issue or I created one for it.
Yep.
I actually I was planning to start a thread and each I can call out the specific issue that pertains to that comment, but I think it ends up, is that not advisable because it ends up pinging the original?
No, it's not, and you can ask follow-up questions of all those people too. You can, those people are your engaged early users. So interacting with them is a good thing. What I was describing during that section of the call was just what I would personally do. But if you want to add a reply to each of those and talk to the person and say, look, I think I found this here, can you go check it out? Also totally fine. Whatever you.
Yeah, I meant I was just going to use it to take notes that this one is going to be covered in this particular issue and not.
If you're just talking to yourself, I wouldn't leave comments because then it's because other people will be seeing those. But but another way you could handle the exact same thing is just say, hey, look, thanks for the comment. I found what looks like a duplicate issue here, so I've added your comments to it. Check it out and, feel free to jump in. And then it's a more interactive thing. And then that's fine.
Yeah, and that way I can direct them to somewhere else where there's going to be ongoing conversation about that issue.
Exactly, yeah. And so maybe they're interested in continuing to be involved.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I'm super tired. Baby was up all night last night, so I took the rest of the day off because I'm not feeling well.
Oh, no.
But yeah, this was a great call. I'm glad we knocked this out.
Yeah.
Can you please upload this to Unfiltered today and then share it with, I guess, Dimitri, and is Dimitri's probably the key one, and just maybe even post it in the in that issue so that anybody who was interested in the topic can watch.
Yeah. I feel like this is going to have influence and collaboration with all of the stages in the CI/CD section. So yeah, for me, that was very valuable. I feel like I have a grasp of what is going to be. So, and I will also go and give an update to my team about this. It's upcoming.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll just probably just post it in the Verify channel because
that makes sense.
Elliot was asking me about it.
Yeah, and there's other people who are interested in Verify who are in that channel who may want to watch it as well.
Okay, I'll stop recording.
Cool.